There we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. We are Rethinking Psychiatry, and we are welcoming you to our in our series of Soteria speakers with Soteria Israel. Very excited.
Yes, thank you, Grace, and thank you everyone for being here. We're excited to have people from all over the world here. And I just wanted to say a few introductory remarks, and we're also excited to have a voice here. So Rethinking Psychiatry is an independent, all-volunteer educational activist group. We're based in Portland, Oregon. One of the few silver linings of the pandemic has been that since we've moved online, we've been able to open up our events to people all over the world. And we're about creating community, educating, and activating for choices. We're part of a larger movement working to promote healing and choices in and beyond our mental health care system. And thanks to Molly from Reimagining Recovery, which is another Portland-based group that has similar goals and mission, for coming up with that phrase. And we're made up of people with lived experience, family members, professionals, and other allies. We are not affiliated with and do not receive funding from or promote any religious organization, any government entity, corporation, or drug company. And we have people from a wide variety of viewpoints. And thank you to members of the core team. Grace and I are members of the core team. And do we have anyone else here currently from the core team?
Well, we could just name Cindy Fisher.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, David. Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
And Kathy Nelson and Lee Thung, and who else is part of it?
And Lacey.
And
yes,
other folk.
Yes, I hope we didn't forget anyone. But thank you everyone for working hard to put this together. And thank you to the many like-minded organizations. We mentioned Reimagining Recovery, Mind Freedom, Folk Time, the Oregon Mental Health Consumers Association, the David Romprey Warm Line, too many to name in Portland and all around the world. Like Grace said, this event is confidential. Participants will not be on the recording. You can choose whether or not to have your camera on. You can change your name to anything you'd like. And no participants will be seen on the recording. And we'll be having people put in questions in the chat, and I'll be keeping track of the chat questions, and then we'll have a question and answer period afterwards. And we just like to always say that we represent a wide variety of opinions. We don't expect people to agree on everything. Often the idea for anyone who's familiar with intentional peer support, which is a great model, there's this idea of holding multiple truths, that people can see a situation from very different perspectives, and we don't expect people to agree on everything. We just ask that everyone be respectful. And we welcome a variety of perspectives and opinions. So anything I missed there, Grace?
Or Phyllis or anyone else?
Yes.
I think you got it.
Oh, okay, great. And we're very excited to have Voice Hendricks here. Voice, as many of you probably know, helped start the original Soteria House in California in the 1970s. So it's great to have someone who was here from the very beginning of the Soteria project here. So Voice, if you'd like, we'd just like to hear a few words from you about your experience as one of the original members of Soteria.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what am I going to say. First, I don't want to use up too much time because I'm looking forward to the presentation itself. Soteria comes out of 1971, at that point when state hospitals were being closed, and suddenly people were shoved into the community without any really theories and any ways of dealing with people in the community versus state hospital. So Soteria essentially was a mental health study through NIMH, and it opened in 1971 in San Jose, California. Originally, it was supposed to be open at the state hospital itself, and then that became very clear that made no sense in the model. So what we're presenting here is a model of care for people who been diagnosed. For Soteria was a study, so it had to be precise. Diagnosed schizophrenia in the DSM-2 paradigm, not DSM-3. So it was a different time in some ways, but it was compared. Soteria was a treatment model compared to the county hospital system. A mental health act in the United States was passed mid 60s, I think around 1968, and it really hadn't been completely initiated and started until 70, 71, 72 was when we started setting up the mechanism to get funding for the counties to be able to treat those folks who have been let out of state hospitals. So what we're talking about here is a different way of being with people, or use the model, treating people who had a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And it specifically, Soteria was designed to look at people who were what would call at that point first break, people who had no more than 6 months of treatment in the system, but they were people who were considered to be the most likely to be chronic in the system. They had there's a 7 criteria to fit the study. And those 7 criteria would suggest that these people were going to be chronic in the system. And the point of Soteria is to look at the Soteria model of treatment versus the traditional medical model, the county hospital system that existed at the time. Understanding there was no social rehab movement, there was no peer review, none of that, not even what we called the family NAMI, and those didn't exist at this point. So we're talking about a time that was quite different than what exists now. So this is important to understand. Like I said, I don't want to intrude on terms of the Israel presentation, so I think I should end it at this point.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Voice. It's always really exciting when you join us, and Voice is part of, and many of us here today are part of a planning group to create a Soteria and Peer Respite Summit. And if anybody's where we share information and give people kind of try to give people the nuts and bolts of how to bring one of these models to your community. If you're interested in helping us plan this, please email us at rethinkingpsychiatry@gmail.com, and we'll get you plugged in. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce our speakers. And Rachel, will you monitor the admitting people?
Yes.
Let's do this. Thank you.
Sure.
So, so I want to introduce Avraham Friedlander, affectionately known as Avrami. He's a clinical psychologist trainee at Sheba Hospital in Israel, which means he's doing his doctorate in psychology, and he's researching alternatives to psychiatric hospitalization. And as I'm guessing you're going to hear, he began his professional career with a personal spiritual experience, otherwise known as a psychotic break, 16 years ago, which made him want to change the conventional method of treatment. And he, with Professor Pesach Lichtenberg, who's our co-speaker, they established the first Soteria Houses in Israel. And Avrami managed the Soteria House for Men in Jerusalem. In addition, Avrami is currently a member of a number of founding teams for additional alternatives in Israel and in thinking groups for changing the therapeutic paradigm within the conventional framework. And Professor Dr. Pesach Lichtenberg is the former head of the Department of Psychiatry at the Hebrew University. He headed a closed psychiatric ward, hospital ward for 25 years before being fired. And I do hope we'll hear that story. I could hear a round of cheers in the background, I'm sure. He is the founder and professional director of Soteria Israel, a nonprofit organization currently operating 3 Soteria homes and planning more. I believe they have a 4th on the way. So without further ado, I want to introduce Avrami and Pesach. Pesach, I want to just, okay, there we go. So I can only spotlight one of you or the other at a time. So, and
Okay.
hopefully I'll get the timing right.
I'll give it a start. Grace, Rachel, thank you very much for having us over here and for a chance to tell the story. Going over the names of the participants, I want to say hello to my nephew, Alexander Lichtenberg, who's here, who, because of whom I was, for the first time since Corona, I traveled abroad to his wedding in New Jersey, just a week ago, and I see Tova is here as well, his bride. Alexander is not just listening, not just a nephew, but he's also a resident in psychiatry in Worcester, Massachusetts. But even more important than that, he volunteered for a month in our Soteria in Israel, so I'm sure he's bringing the right ideas to his residency program, where resident means something very different than what it means in Soteria. And I'm honored and humbled to see Voice here. I mean, you know, what sustained me in 25 years of heading a closed ward, the last 10 of which I was dreaming Soteria, was reading that book Soteria, which Lauren and Voice wrote. And the name of the third author escapes me at the moment. But
Deborah Fort.
And just, sorry?
Deborah Fort.
Yes, and to imagine that there is another kind of psychiatry which it is possible to do, it was an amazing fantasy, which became reality. And to actually meet you here, Voice, is as I said, a pleasure and an honor, and humbling. Now, you know, it's not a sense now that I'm not simply saying, hey, this is what we do, but now, you know, the real McCoy is here and can contradict everything I say, but I'll handle these anxieties, and afterwards I'll be happy to hear from you where I got it wrong, where we got it wrong.
Don't worry about that. There is no wrong.
Oh, so that we got right. Good. And I'll lead into Avremi by saying that I mean, 25 years I headed this ward, men's division of a hospital, which I prefer not to name, and we did some good things and we did some bad things, and as time went on, I mean, I started psychiatry in the 1980s. I started my residency program, again, residency in the sense of specialization in psychiatry. And it was a very heady time to be a psychiatrist then. I mean, we knew that we were on the cusp of a neurobiological revolution. We knew that we were on the cusp of a genetic revolution. It was obvious that all this was going to revolutionize psychiatry, and I was perfectly positioned for the second generation of antipsychotic medication, which we knew would come around within a decade, as it did. And then the true redemption would come. So when sometimes I'm critical, and often I'm critical of current paradigms in biological psychiatry and biomedical models, it's sort of an unrequited love, because I expected so much and it wasn't returned, that kind of feeling. And with time, I began thinking about how things could be done differently. And thought, well, why do you need an institution? Then we found, then someone, one of my biological psychiatry teachers, but from a different period, it was very open mind, Chaim Bellmaker. He said, you should know about Soteria. And I was hooked. And it was in January 2005 that I wrote my first plan about how this place should operate, what rules we should not have, what things we should not do, but more importantly, the kind of humanity and togetherness. That was January 2005. And as I was writing that, and here, Avremi, I think is where you come in. Avremi, switch to Avremi.
Yeah, wait. Here I make share screen. What you wait when I get inside the story to keep
Now, tell about yourself and how we met, our first date,
Okay.
so to speak.
Okay. So we met 2 months after Pesach wrote his first paper about Soteria in Israel. It was in March in 2005. I was in that time 23 years old, and I was very I was learning at that time that I was deep inside the mystics part of the Jewish religion, and I was I was early every night, and I went to sleep every night at 9 p.m. and wake in midnight, and was learning and praying all the night till the morning, of learning mystics things and praying for the Messiah, and the temple will be built again. And at that time, I was learning about the issue of the Jewish belief of what is my part in life, how much I'm responsible, or what is how much I'm responsible to my life, or what God is making in life. And when I got inside all the time, like felt that I don't have nothing in this world, and God is He's in charge of everything, and it was very good for me, because I felt that I don't need to be anxiety, because God is doing everything and everything is good. And I started to less and less grounding on the ground, but I felt good. It was very good for me. And then I had only one rope that was grounding to the ground, that I thought that what I am responsible is to believe on that or not to believe on that. So I'm responsible. My responsibility to believe that God is doing everything, or not to believe on that part. And then one friend came to me and said to me, why I think that this is my responsibility. Maybe also that is responsibility of God. And if he wish that I will believe, I will believe. And if he wish that I won't believe, I won't believe. And when he told me that, he cut the last rope that I had to the ground. And for me, it was, I think, my best week in my life. I felt that I am in heaven, that there is no problems in the world. I'm not in charge of nothing. I felt that I'm in God's hands. But my wife didn't like what happened to me. I don't know why, but she didn't like. I said things that she didn't like, because I was with no responsibility, and And then what my rabbi told me that if you, for peace between husband and wife, you don't need to say everything. So I said, okay. So I shut my mouth and I like came back to ground, and like 20 days, everything was look like normal, but inside things get bigger and bigger. And I thought that I know the source of souls of people. And I like went in the streets and told people that you are the soul of Abraham, you are the soul of Messiah. And also I thought that maybe I am a prophet. I thought that I know when the Messiah will come and when the temple will be built. But I had a question. It wasn't like I didn't was sure that I'm a prophet. And I went to a big rabbi in Israel to ask him if he thinks that I am a prophet. Why don't see myself?
We see you.
Oh, okay. Now it's back. Okay. And I went to ask a big rabbi if he thinks that I'm a prophet, and he was very polite to me. And he took my hand and closed his eyes like he's serious, and was like thinking. And like after like a half a minute, he opened his eyes and he says that he thinks that I'm not. And I said, okay, if he says that I'm not, maybe I'm only imagination. It was very disappointed for me, but I accept what the rabbi said. And after 20 days, it got bigger. And then I thought that I got a secret from sky, how to bring the Messiah. And I went to the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and I like lay down on the floor and prayed with closed eyes about what the secrets that I got, how to bring the Messiah. And I made a vow that I won't open my eyes and won't speak to nobody and won't stand up till the Messiah will come. I wanted deeply, deeply to say to God how much I want the Messiah will come. And I said that I will open the eyes when the Messiah will be in front of me. When he will come, I will open my eyes. He's the first one that I will see. And that's how I got to the psychiatric word. So wait, Pesach, I will put share screen again.
Yeah, that indeed was like 2 weeks after I wrote my first program. Now this, I want you to see what that means, that he came to my psychiatric, came to the psychiatric department. I want to explain to you where I worked those 25 years, because it's relevant to what we're doing, and it says something, I think, about the position of psychiatry in many places. This is a Google Earth picture of the area where I worked. To be more specific, can you press once, Avremi? You can see here the municipal cemetery, which is a true necropolis on the edge of town, Avremi. And here is a local garbage dump where there's a steady traffic of garbage trucks making their way here, Avremi. Down here is a shooting range where during the day you can hear the pop-pop of rifle shooting as people practice. Not a very good background for people who may have certain suspicious tendencies and ask who exactly is being shot at. And, Avremi, this is my office. This is where it's a terraced building, which you can kind of make out. We were on the bottom floor, which somehow seems right, where you could, from the edge, you could see some of the tombstones from the window. And this is where Avremi came in to for our first meeting. Okay, you can turn off the share screen. And And what I saw was somebody who came in the night before with a diagnosis of catatonia. He wasn't responding, and I took him into the morning staff meeting. He was passively led to sit down. He wouldn't look at anyone. And I talked to him. I tried to understand and to question him, to be empathic and all that. And no verbal response, but there was a certain sense that he was hearing me. I don't know if it was a changed depth of his breathing, or I don't know what it was, but there was a sense somehow that he was with me despite outward appearances. And the staff meeting was over. He was sent back to his room, sent back meaning he had to be led there. I was surprised that he seemed to respond to what I said about going back. And then, you know how staff meetings are in hospitals. Should we give him Zyprexa, or should we give him Haldol? Should we give him 5 milligrams or 20 milligrams? Yes, Avremi. Go ahead.
Say how I felt in the meeting with you, the first meeting.
Yes, please do.
So for me, it was first time in a psychiatric hospital. In that time, I didn't know what the meaning of a psychiatric hospital. I didn't know what is psychiatric at all. And I came to the hospital, and I felt very bad in that meeting. It was like with a lot of doctors in the room, and I felt like I'm a rabbit in a a mouse. A mouse that everybody want to test me.
A laboratory mouse.
Yeah, laboratory mouse. But I felt that Pesach is very empathic for me. And when he told me to, okay, when I didn't talk to him, and he told me, okay, you can go back to your room, because he was authority for me, he's a doctor, so I forgot my vowel. And I stand up and go back to my room. And when I walked, then I remember, oh no, I had a vowel. I'm not supposed to walk. But then I said, okay, no, never mind. Only one time, and I will keep my vowel after. And I think also that point for Pesach was important to see that it's not simple catatonic situation.
And after the discussion, I said, we will not give him any medication. Let's see what happens. And then something happened. His wife, who knew that he had a wife? His wife showed up and said, you have to help my husband. He's taken a solemn vow, which he cannot violate, not to talk, not to look at anyone, not to drink, not to eat. Well, that gave the catatonia a completely different perspective. And a sacred vow has certain non-pharmacological interventions which can be done. All you need is any improvised court of Jewish law of 3 people who have to adjudicate whether this vow can be annulled. And I asked the wife who Avremi's, I finally knew his name, hadn't even known his name until then. His name was anonymous. I asked who his rabbi was, got on the phone with the rabbi, and within an hour or 2, his rabbi came with the rabbi's driver, and the 2 of them, plus me, we constituted the improvised court of law, and then started a 20-minute session led by the rabbi in a very psychotherapeutic way, saying maybe you didn't understand all of the ramifications. Maybe you didn't know that you would end up in a hospital, that you'd cause this kind of anxiety for your wife, that you will cause so much distress to everyone, that you'd be in a hospital, that they were about to put a catheter in you, which we had not intended, but a little bit of threat doesn't always hurt in these situations. And then we command you to talk. And for the first time, I actually heard Avremi's voice. And Avremi said, but in order to bring the Messiah, I'm willing to suffer. I'm willing to go through all of this. The rabbi said, you're willing, that's very nice, but still you did not take this into consideration. And so this went on for 20 minutes, at the end of which we all muttered a certain Jewish phrase, "Mutar lecha," you are hereby released from the vows. And for the first time, Avremi looked up, and the rabbi gave him a hug. And my staff told me that he nevertheless needs to be under observation for a week, but I sent him home after 3 or 4 hours. And I thought that was it. I thought that was it. And then maybe Avremi still, we're going to have to get to Soteria. So let's move on.
Okay, trying. Well, I don't know why it stopped. Oh, okay, here. So, okay. So I went to my life and I didn't see Pesach for like 8 years, something like that. And those years, I wanted to start learning psychologist because what I saw in the department, it was very hard for me. I didn't realize that that's how we are treating people in Israel that have mental breaks. So I wanted to learn psychologist to make it different. And to get into the second grade, I need to get a recommend, and I need to volunteer. So I thought maybe I will go to volunteer in Pesach department. So I called him, and he said, okay. And I came to volunteer, but it was very hard for me to volunteer in a psychiatric department ward. And what I thought there, it was very hard. So when I saw that people like tied or people were locked in isolation room, I wanted to take them out from there. And I was screaming on the staff, and they say that I'm making split, that they are bad and I am good, and I'm making problems in the ward. And I got a key. I got a key to the isolation room, and I sometimes open the isolation room and take people out from the isolation room. That was catastrophe in the ward. And I took patients from the ward outside to make travels, because inside the department they was locked all the day and didn't do nothing and was sleeping on the floor on the department. So I took them out, but they allowed me only to take 4, and I took 10 every time. And I did a lot of mess, and I gave the key of the department to the patients that they will open the door. And that was, I don't know how they saw those stuff. And then after all those bad things that I make in the department, in the ward, they told me, the staff, that the head minister is calling me to his office. And I was very afraid, because I know all my life when the head minister is calling me to his office, it's only for bad stuff. I didn't finish my school because I had a lot of trouble. So I thought also here, Pesach will tell me that I cannot stay in the department. And Pesach, now you can say what happened when you called me to your room.
I'd already been working at that time, close to a decade, a very frustrating time of trying to set up Soteria. And it was difficult because you had 2 possibilities. You can either go to the HMOs. In Israel, there are 4 HMOs by which all citizens have their health insurance. Like every civilized country has universal health insurance, if I'm not mistaken. Right? And either they or the Ministry of Health has to finance me, and each one was passing the buck to the other because there was some kind of reform. Reform means an excuse to do nothing. So I got a lot of encouragement and zero funding, and I knew that I was not interested in making a single home private pay, which would be a boutique for people who can afford it. I wanted something which could become a part of the system, of the public healthcare system, the well-developed public healthcare system in this country, and which would not be a single hospital, which could be a model which would be able to replicate itself, a model which would be able to become a significant part of the system, which clearly would mean making certain compromises. But that's always a question when you try to bring about change. How much of it do you do from within? How much do you do from without? I think that the original Soteria, funded by NIMH, there was the hope that it would spawn further houses and that it would become a common model. Why that didn't happen, I don't really know. I imagine there was something to do with the zeitgeist, that people were so excited about these new drugs, it was hard to accept that we might be missing something. But we'll leave that question to the historians. We wanted to do this with public funding. And I told Avremi, it was 2013, I was so impressed by his, I was so impressed by Avremi's organizational, therapeutic abilities, the way he was able to revivify a whole wing of the department, and I knew that I wanted him to be a partner. The fact that he'd been hospitalized with me was, of course, an advantage, and we continued working. I already had some partners with me. With time, Avremi would be the most important person for what I was doing. We set up with the generous help of a foundation, the Laszlo Tauber Foundation in Israel, which tries to find projects in mental health which can make a difference. So they began supporting us and eventually funding us. In the end of 2013, we even got a promise from the CEO of the Ministry of Health that we would be funded. I remember leaving the meeting in a mild dissociative state, believing this was finally going to happen. I mean, I was flying in plain English. It turned out to be premature. Nothing happened. We continued working. At some point, one meeting led to another meeting, all of which led to nothing. When I made one more meeting, so Avremi, I remember, stopped me and said, "Sure, you want to set up Soteria? I want to go on having meetings," which was, I think, a necessary slap in the face. But we have other ways of treating people who slap me in the face, but that's wasn't the point here, was it? And then in the summer of 2016, after another futile meeting, which suggested that we write more letters, we decided to go for it. And there was a time when there was a radio commentator who put a spotlight on what was happening in psychiatric hospitals, and a very negative, very, very dark, tawdry spotlight. And it gave me the sense that this is a time to take the risk. No, the much awaited for approval of the government, the funding of the HMOs, none of it happened. We took some funding, which we got from a donor, Adigast, and we set up shop. And the first year in this beautiful house in the center of town in Jerusalem, next to the light train, next to festivals and community centers, in Western Jerusalem, near the old city, in the center of town. Every store that you could want is there, and cafes and restaurants. The exact opposite of what we had in what I showed you, where we were used to be next to the cemetery. Here we were in the center of town, which was a statement we wanted to make. People started coming. There was this rumor that we're doing something. Colleagues would come and visit, and the first response was usually, "But I'd be happy to live in this place." And my answer would be, "Well, that's the point. So why can't they?" And it was a wonderful first year where we didn't have any regulation. We did it as not exactly underground, but it was it was without any approval. A senior lawyer, well known for suing doctors, I asked him what his opinion was of what we do. And I figured that way, if he'd ever have to sue me, he'd have to disqualify himself because of this contact. And he said that when the inevitable catastrophe happens, me and my staff and I, we will all pay with our property, with our license, and with our liberty, which was not encouraging. But miraculously, not miraculously, it's a matter of lobbying and turning to the authorities. The Ministry of Health came through, and within 1 year of setting up the place, they actually established a guidelines for our model. They called it what could be translated from the Hebrew as a balancing home. I don't like the term balancing. I don't want people to think of chemical imbalances, which we're balancing, but I'm not complaining. The fact is that the Ministry of Health, within a year, made us legitimate. Within a year and a month, did their first inspection of our grounds, but that comes with the that's part of the game. Shortly thereafter, a month after that, we set up our second home. Our first home was for men. Many reasons for that, including we didn't want to take Morris, but our second home a year later was for women. And since then, in 2019, we set up a home which is for men and women together. Each of these homes started with 7, but can go up to 10 residents who come and join us. We'll talk some more about statistics towards the end, but the average stay here is 35 days for all the homes together, a far cry from what happened in the original Soteria. But these are the realities of wanting to be a part of the system. There's no way today, I think in any country, to get funding for a hospital alternative, which keeps people for 5 or 6 months, like the original Soteria. That's not going to happen, and we realize that if we want to be a part of the system, we're going to have to make our peace with the system, and that includes the limited stay of 35 days, which you can do a lot with. It was a long road to get this kind of recognition. As one of my former colleagues, head of a department, when he saw me, he said in the warmest, most friendliest voice possible, and he's a friendly guy, I think he meant well, you know that your picture is hung up in the lobby of every hospital and people shoot darts at it. Meaning that we had a certain difficulty in convincing people that we are a legitimate alternative, but it's been happening. The first year, it was all private pay. The first year and a half, I would say, was all private pay. By today, the accomplishments, the change has been substantial. We have 3 homes. The government guidelines have allowed for the establishment of 7 homes, which are not ours. They're not exactly Soteria. They're not as minded as we are about the limitations of medication, but they are homes which take people in the community, and instead of putting them into an institution where they would otherwise go, they go into a house. And some of them have more structured activities than we do. Some of them more readily give medication than we do, but they're all more alike than different. And there'll be a published article accepted already in psychiatric services, which will be describing this particular service for all the homes. And that's, so there's a real change which has come about. And we'd like to, so 2 of the 4 HMOs support us. Support us meaning that someone who comes into us and belongs to one of these 4 health maintenance organizations, health insurance, public health insurance. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier, Absalom. 2 out of the 4 support us. The other two support other of these homes which have been set up. So all of the homes have some public funding, and we're in touch with the others. It's clearly that we're still in a pilot period, a trial period, where people are trying to figure out how this can help. And it's becoming more and more part of the system. And we'd like to tell you a little bit about what happens in our Soteria homes. The first principle is that there are no firm principles. This is something which is very important to know, because a lot of damage is done by people who have the answers and know that they have the answers, and the ability to understand that that's not so, and they have to be open to other sources of information, and they have to consider other possibilities. And there's no one way to treat people, to help people, to help them get to a better place. This already provides a lot of room for the person coming to get help and for the people giving the help to be flexible, to seek from their own experience what they can do. Next. And I think the most fundamental idea, which it's so obvious when I stress this point, I feel I'm talking to many of my colleagues, that extreme emotional states are human problems, are human states, which demand humane responses. I assume that talking to the people here, it's like I'm saying something so obvious as to be trivial, but it's not. The point is that, and R.D. Lang discusses this in the Divide itself, in the introduction to the book. Everybody expects that when he speaks, people are trying to make sense of what he's saying. As you listen to me, you're trying to understand, if you're still here and I haven't put you to sleep, you're trying to understand what I'm saying. You're not trying to figure out which part of my cortex is currently active. You're not making an assessment about whether I have any kind of loosening of associations and other speech patterns. You're trying to understand me. And somehow people who are labeled seriously mentally ill, when they come to seek help, they've lost this basic right of trying to be understood. And what we do, and it should be very clear, I do believe that the brain is a basis for all of our subjective states. But still, we try to understand this on the subjective level. If I play chess with the computer, I don't try to beat it by short-circuiting the computer. I try to understand what it's doing and to do something in return. When I talk to somebody, it's a soul meeting another soul, and it's not on the level of a brain meeting a brain. And everything that we do about a regular home environment, about the respect we give to other people, begins with this simple insight. Next, Avremi.
I only will say another thing here, that it's not only the psychiatrist don't see, it's like in the regular situation of, not regular, human situation. Also, sometimes I'm talking with wives or with mothers, and they're also all the time when their husband or when their son are saying something, they don't want to understand. They're always thinking maybe that means that now he's psychotic, he's not psychotic, he's sick, he's not sick. It's not only doctors. Also, sometimes the population, the community, when somebody is starting to get a psychotic, we forget to think that he's still a person. And when he's starting to talk, we're all the time checking he's okay or not okay, he's sick or not sick.
Right. Okay. Now it follows from that what we have is a home. It's not an institution. It's a place where people can feel they're at home. You see a couple of the picture on the left. You see a living room before it got too tattered. On the right, one of our residents wrote on the wall, home ? Well, everything is open to question with us. And this is where we try to be with the people who come for help. Next, Avremi. And the therapeutic community has many meetings, but the idea is that there's less hierarchy. People are there together. Visitors from the outside, especially from mental health services and other places, they come in and they're always a little bit unnerved because they can't quite make out who here is getting help, who's giving help, who's just hanging out. It's a community of people together, sharing, talking. The main work, even though there is, eventually we did, in the beginning there would be no, I forbade there to be any individual therapy, because I thought everything has to be put into the public sphere of the community. So, for example, I remember one evening where yes, that was the first rule: no strict rules, no firm principles. The chats are distracting me, but that's fine. I remember a woman who, it was late on a wintry night, and she demanded to go home because she knew that she was going to be raped in her room, and because she was hearing these things. And I talked to her. I tried to talk to her about, let's see what we can do. If you leave now, it's not going to be good. I knew that it was raining. She lived in another city. Her family wasn't ready to accept her, but she insisted. So in the therapeutic community, you understand that it's not what the psychiatrist or anybody says. It's let's come together. And she agreed that I raise this with an ad hoc home meeting, which we did, which we made right there. And it was a, and with her permission, I presented the problem. And one of the residents said, maybe, what if I put a mattress in your room and I'll sleep next to you? And another one said, that last room over there, it has a very heavy door which you can lock and you'll really be safe. And all of these ideas were thrown about as people discussed how to help, what to do. And she one by one, she refused all of the solutions. By the end of it, apparently feeling that this coming together, this desire to help her was significant, she said, but I'm going to stay. It's okay. And that's what happened. This is a power of community. This is a power of people coming together to help. And it's much stronger than an individual, than any individual therapist can offer. Next. Avremi. We're very proud of the staff. The main part of staff, the main component of our staff are what we call them the companions. They're not counselors because we don't claim to know how to counsel people, but they are companions. They try to deal with the people who come to get help. They are not professionals. There are students. There are many people with lived experience who we don't look for them, but they come. And with us, if you've been hospitalized, that's a point in your favor. And they, of course, there's a lot of supervision going on, mostly group, a bit of individual as well, in order to help them contain the very intense experiences which the companion needs to go through. They're on the front line. In the hospital, this would be the nurses, aides who would wander around the department. They were the main presence, but they would get very little guidance and help. So here, what we did is to make them the center. The really important point is that this is a staff that counts. It's shameful that they get minimum wage. This might be less important for students who know that they come for a year or two or three and they get supervision, letter of recommendation, but we don't want only students. We want people in all stages of life, and it's not good, but these are problems which we have not yet solved. There is professional staff, but the main staff of the professionals, social worker, clinical psychologist, psychiatrist, is really to accompany the companions, to be there for them, to help them feel that the place is contained so that they're able to do what they do and to be there with the residents around the clock. And we're very proud of this hardworking, dedicated staff, which without them, we would become just a department located in the community, and we're so much more than that. Next, Avremi. And now there's one principle, the therapeutic principle, which Lauren Masha spoke about, interpersonal phenomenology, to be with the person in a non-judgmental way. This is talking about deep empathy, non-judgmental, or in Jerusalem we call this the Turkey principle, which I invite you, Avrami, to tell us about.
Okay. In the Jewish culture, it's by Rabbi Nachman from Breslav in Ukraine.
200 years ago.
200 years ago. And he's talking about a prince that sat at his turkey. And he went down the table and took out his clothes and screamed like a turkey and ate only beans. And nobody knew how to deal with him. And then came a smart person and told the king that he thinks that he can handle with a prince. And he came down the table and took out his clothes too and started to scream like a turkey, like him, and eat beans. And then the prince asked him, "Hey, who are you? What you're doing?" And the smart person told him, "Who are you? What you're doing?" He said, "Well, I am a turkey." So, okay, I am a turkey too. And they started to scream together down the table. And the king and all the kingdom didn't know what to do. They thought they have one problem, now they have two problems. But the smart person told the king that if everything is okay, he's managing the situation, handle the situation. And then after like a couple of time, he asked that they will give him a good food to eat. And they give him under the table good food to eat. And the prince asked the smart person, "What you're doing?" And he said, I'm eating this cake, this good food. And the prince said, "How you can do that? Why not? Why? Because if I'm turkey, turkey cannot eat good food. Taste, it's good." And the prince also tasted good food, and they started to eat good food. And then after more time, the smart person asked for clothes. And the prince asked, what you're doing? And he said, "Well, I'm cold." "Why? Because I cannot put clothes." "Why? Because I'm turkey, I cannot put clothes." And then also the prince put clothes. And that's how the story is telling that how this smart person bring back the prince to the civilization. And this is a story that in Israel is very famous, and we are a lot of talking about this story in Israel. I can tell something that we did, being with or Turkey Prince therapy in Soteria Man. In the beginning of Soteria, I came with my family every Saturday, every 2 Saturdays, every 2 weeks. All the Saturday, I came with my family. I have 6 children. We came to Soteria, and we make there the end of the week in the house. And one time, one of the residents, he was tied to the floor. That's what he said, that he cannot stand up because he's tied. And I asked him what we can do. And he said that he thinks that if he will take a rice from the kitchen, I can open his handcuffs with a rice. But he says that I don't leave him. He needs me near him. So I asked my little boy, he was 8 years old, if he can bring me a rice from the kitchen. And my son go to the kitchen and give me rice. And he opened, my son opened, I told him that I asked this the resident, where are the handcuffs? I cannot see them. And he showed me where are them. And he showed also my son. And my son took the rice and opened the handcuffs. And then he said, "Oh, I'm so tired. I was tied so much time. Please help me to stand." And I took one hand, and my little boy, 8 years old, took the other hand, and we together took him to his bed. We stand him up and took him to his bed and lie him down and put him. I don't know. We say put what in bed. The clothes.
Covered him. Yeah. Okay.
Covered him, and after like 1 month, he remembered it, and it was very like we touched him, how we was being with him. So this is like a little story of a Turkey prince in being with him.
It's a sort of story which wouldn't happen in the hospital ward. It's a sort of story which, apropos how the little blurb about me, it's because of doing such things, my hospital decided that I really can't work for them anymore, even though I offered them some sort of cooperation, but they weren't interested. I have to thank them. Yes, you also didn't, Avremi, you probably should not have told them about the human excrement on the walls of the isolation room to a reporter. That probably did not help you or me, but I've forgiven you for that. I think it's, I would say it's for the best that I'm not there anymore. What's interesting in the story of the Turkey prince, it's not clear in the end. It used to trouble me that in the end of the story, it's not clear if the prince, who was finally sitting not under the table but above the table eating real food and fully dressed, does he still think that he's a turkey? Is this real therapy or not? In Soteria, I came to understand that the point isn't to change the symptom. The point is to help the person with whatever his belief as far as possible to be able to live a full life, as in the recovery movement, which wasn't around the original Soteria, but the recovery movement gives words to this, to see how the person going with his strength and abilities is able to make the most of his life. And that does not necessarily mean that you have to hammer or medicate this idea about being a turkey out of him. Next principle. Yes, as in every therapeutic community, the structure is flexible. Each rule has to prove itself. With time, I can already see that we're getting more rules and regulations. This is inevitable, but the rules have to prove themselves and have to make sense. And the rules are there to serve the people who are coming to get help and not to make life easy for the staff. That is not the point. And little hierarchy, as we said, everybody's voice is heard over here. There's no sense of I'm the expert and I know. Not when I'm talking with companions who may have no higher education. Not when I'm talking with the residents who are experts about themselves. Hierarchy is not a part of what we do in that way. The next, Avremi. Yes, obviously, diagnosis is a problem. You hardly have to be part of Soteria to know just how problematic diagnosis is in terms of reliability, in terms of validity. It's sort of a jargon which is meant to ease communication between professionals and to develop a certain kind of inside language, but in the end, it itself is a serious source of stigma, and for little gain, because research which is based, even biological research based on diagnosis, is not worth very much today. Is not really valued. So it's not part of the language. We don't talk the language in the house. Sometimes we have to write a letter to one of the health maintenance organizations financing us, and then I may have no choice but to put in an F code of the ICD, but that's not the way we talk inside inside the house. Somebody made a comment where I wrote something about extreme states are part of human conditioning, and I think the point of the comment was that the word state is itself sounds already a bit artificial, and I accept that point. It's not a matter of the language police. It's a matter of always keeping the experiences of all the people within Soteria something accessible, something human, which ordinary language can find a way to express and help us understand what's happening. And obviously less medication. I think Avremi will have some points, and we should speed up, Avremi, because we have some information to show, and we also have a former resident in the house who I want to have a chance to speak with us. But I'll just say briefly that one of the rules is that medication is not first line. Now, in the original Soteria, as is written in the book, the rule was that 6 weeks the first 6 weeks you don't get antipsychotic medication. With us, there isn't a second 6 weeks. 6 weeks is a little bit more than the average stay. So medication is not first line. Somebody who comes in with no medication, even if he's psychotic, first of all, let him come in. I sometimes will tell the concerned family that Soteria itself is worth, I tell them, 1.5 milligrams of Risperdal. I don't know where I got that number from. I hope it doesn't make Risperdal sound better than it is, but it's helpful to assuage the anxiety of people of, what, you're not going to treat him? Who said we're not going to treat him? This whole house is saturated with help and with goodwill and getting people to a better place. Medication is not the first line of how we do it, but sometimes it does become necessary, especially when time is limited, when there's great distress, when we feel that we don't have another way of bringing under control, as in the original Soteria, where many people did in the end get medication. These are statistics which Lauren Mosher composed and compiled, compiled and reported on articles, some of them written in the 1990s. And I don't think it's viable, not for a group like ours, which is determined to be a part of the public system, and not for the necessity to be able to help people in extreme distress, but always keeping in mind that when we do give medication, and sometimes we're able not to, but when we do, we know it's symptomatic. We know it's not something which is intended for long term. And we keep a very, I think, correct perspective about what medication can do, i.e. a certain kind of symptomatic calming, which even R.D. Lang is quoted as saying in a late life interview. But it's certainly not the center. It's something which becomes one of the parts of the treatment plan, but it's not the first part of this. Okay, and before, I would also add that we work with families. We try to invite families every week to have a meeting in the spirit of open dialogue, meaning that we discuss with polyphony of voices, knowing that there's no one right way of seeing things. We talk with people about about what's happening. It's not a matter of an identified patient. It's a matter of everybody talking together about their distress. Can you go back for a moment to right wing and left wing of Remy? I'm especially interested in voice hearing about this. Yeah. If you look at the different soterias which have formed over the years, I think that you can discern sort of a left wing and a right wing. The left wing is that there are no meds, it's just not a part. And the right wing is that there are meds with consent, of course. I think, for example, of Switzerland, of Soteria Bern. There are some, and I think we're somewhere in between. There's a left wing which has no professional staff, like the original Soteria. And then there are others which have only professional staff. All the companions are professionals. There's a left wing which completely eschews any sort of formal individual or group psychotherapy. And there are others like us where we do have formal groups. Of course, there's endless ad hoc improvised groups and activities, things going on. It's not a very rigid schedule, and it's not something where anyone is ever required to attend, but there are structured activities. Sometimes it's group dynamics, sometimes it's a lot of psychodrama, sometimes it's yoga or shiatsu, and sometimes it could be a volunteer coming in to do artistic photography with us, all sorts of things. So there are different ways, but I think what's common to all the different soterias is this idea, the principles which we discussed about how to understand the person's suffering, how to provide the proper help, how to build a community which can be supportive, and how not to overdo it with meds. That's something which we do. I see a comment from Patricia Moscow, who I'm happy to see that she is here also, because she was, I think, my first supervisor when I did my clerkship in psychiatry in medical school in the Bronx Bronx Psychiatric Hospital in the Bronx, obviously. It's a high pet. Yes, onwards, Avremi.
Maybe before we start the data, maybe we'll ask, Marom is here, maybe?
Yes, Marom, we'd like Marom to say a few words. Marom, are you there?
I am here. Hello. Thank you. To say now something?
Right.
Can you give them the camera?
Maybe I will stop sharing. Okay.
I'll give, I guess, just a general outline and say thank you. I think that one of the most valuable things, the most important things that can happen is giving value to the experiences that people have had. And that coming here and talking to people is, for me, feels meaningful and gives a meaning to it when it is so often thrown off as some crazy guy's experience. I'm alone. I live in Jerusalem. I've been in Soteria 3 times. I've been hospitalized in other closed wards various amounts of times. Should I start saying now the differences I see? And
Go ahead.
so the first thing I would say is that when you're in a closed ward, you've had this really profound experience, and it's super meaningful, and it's the transformative point of your life, and you get put in a very sterile barracks/prison sort of like environment, and your psyche is awakening naturally. And like, there have been times where I've been in nature and I've had sort of transformative experiences, and I felt a lot more grounded, because as a human, I could relate to all these things around me. I think that coming to Soteria, to an environment that's a home, and that you sense it's a home, there's a kitchen, and you can make tea, and you can sit in the garden, it's a lot more easy to wrap your mind around it's a lot healthier to be in. It's a lot easier to feel calm and safe in an environment like that rather than in a closed hospital ward where you have 30 random people who are all really stressed out. What else? I think when you go to the closed hospital ward, you have maybe 5 minutes with the psychiatrist is barely looking up from his computer, and he's classifying you, and he's seeing how you've been classified in the past, and then you get thrown in there, and you don't know how long it will last, and you have all these terribly traumatizing experiences, which I could get into, but maybe not the point right now. And when you come to Soteria, it's like the Pesach or Avremi will sit with you. And Pesach and Avrami, I just want to say thank you. These are two people who have taken care of me a lot in the past, and my heart goes to them. You sit, and for an hour, like Pesach is you sit for an hour. They will give you the attention that you like inherently feel that you deserve in that moment, and I hope we can all agree that you kind of deserve. You want your experience to be heard. You want to convince the person in front of you that you're the Messiah. So you need to have that like failed attempt. You can't just be injected and rolled down and tied up to kind of make that go away. It's sort of like Avrami's story, and I think it sets you in a mode of, okay, I'm being heard, I'm being respected, and more than that, your experience, whatever it may be, and I guess I'm talking more about psychosis or mania because those are my experiences. But you have this opportunity suddenly in this environment to live it fully, to really let the trauma from the past come to light, or whatever your natural transformation is requiring, have a space and have a voice that is not like protected and scared in a closed ward. You have people, the companions, the accompaniers, I would call them, who are with you and can be sort of like shamans in those situations. A lot of them have that previous experience, and you have like a time to kind of ease and do what you want, and it's not you're not being told you need to be here for 6 months and you need to take all a plethora of medications, and it's like you can kind of have a sense of, okay, I'm going to go back to work and I'm going to go back studying in 2 or 3 weeks, and it's like there have been times, and I study music now, and I had a manic episode, or I don't know the right lingo for these things in these circles, a manic episode in the beginning of the year. For 2 weeks, I was in a Soteria, and boom, and then I'm back, and it's like I have enough experience of getting on my feet, and of exercising and eating the right things and sleeping on time and taking my medication and getting to work and doing hard work, that I don't think that having this 6-month whatever regime some Russian psychiatrist, sorry if that's whatever, but that's how it is here, is saying that you're going to have it, which will stop your life and stop everything, and you're convinced that you're a failure or unwanted by society. There you're in a home, and you're kind of part of society, and you develop a new community, and what would I say? The third thing I think is that, for me at least, is that I have a lot more to say, but I feel like I'm talking a lot. Maybe ask me questions. But the third thing I would say is that I'm sort of like reinvested in the community. I do a scholarship sort of program where I go and I do musical activities as part of my study in Soteria, and there it's like I sit and I can see how I am allowed to have a voice in changing or voicing an opinion about things I see problematic going on. And just also feeling the comfort of like, it's okay if I come back here, because I've invested myself into into being a part of forming whatever this is, and Yeah.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll keep on now, or
Maybe maybe like 5 minutes talk about some of the findings, and then last minute or two I'll talk about our future plans for expanding, and then we'll have questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Maron.
Right. Okay, so maybe we'll do here. This is a picture of the Turkey print story. Here a little bit data. Okay, so in Soteria, we opened in September 2016. We have like almost 500 residents that were in our 3 houses. Age like 34 here, 34. Male 56% male, 43% female. Diagnosis for the articles are like 41% were with a psychosis episode, 20% with a bipolar, 14.5% mood disorders, and also like that complex trauma. And
well, what's important about these numbers is, which are used again for publication purposes and not in-house, is that you see the profile of people entering them, at least by these superficial descriptions, is similar to people who I knew in the closed ward. These we would have to deal with similar situations, and we are, as far as this indicates, able to provide a real alternative for the hospital. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I will skip. I'll come to data. This is about medication, what Pesach started to talk. So you can see here that like not everybody that coming to Soteria is with no medication. So it's not like in Soteria, the original Soteria. So it's very difficult that person coming with medication to take off his medication, also in a little time. So you can see here that people that came without medication, like 55 people that came without medication from the Jerusalem, not from all the 500, from the one that from the like 30% came with no medication, and from those people, 76% they also get out with no medication. So from the 55 residents, 42 residents that came without medication also get out from Soteria without medication. But here it's not antipsychotic, it's all medication. Here now you can see people that get antipsychotic, and you see it's similar. You see that 44% came with no medication, and from that 68%, 35% from 51 also get out with no medication. But here we have a little problem that not everybody we succeed, because sometimes people came with no medication and didn't want to take medication, and the episode would getting worse and worse, and sometimes they got violence. So we needed to hospitalize them. So like 22, I cannot see that down here because of the Zoom. I don't know how to see it, what is writing there. Or maybe I can take it to another place. Oh,
let's see. We see it. We see it.
Yeah, now I can see it. So you see, like 19% we needed to hospitalize. But if you can see, if all the people that we hospitalize are from the group that didn't get medication in the beginning and also didn't get the medication in the end, you can see that at least 26%, 25.5% stayed in Soteria, didn't get medication in the beginning, didn't get medication all the time, and also didn't hospitalize. The same. Why it's not? Why cannot? Oh, wait, what happened? Wait, here you can see the same. Also, the same data for first episode. It's very similar data. Here, what we did to reduce the hospitalization from Soteria to hospital. So we monitored entering. No, this was a Ministry of Health asked us to do, to monitoring the door, entering and entering and exiting, and to and searching dangerous objects such as sharp knives. It's not allowed into the house. I cannot see. Wait, or are kept in locked drawers. And what we did to reduce the hospitalization, so like Pesach said, intensive support and supervision for the staff, learning de-escalation techniques, and setting clear boundaries. And it's a lot. It was not easy to put boundaries, but to put it in a polite and empathic and way that not will make escalation. And also one-on-one carry by companions for the unruly residents. But when these measures did not suffice, we restored to the temporary removal of the resident from the home. So sometimes we told the person that he cannot stay like for 1 day, 2 days, or something like that, and to come back if he can be not less violence or things like that. And also this didn't succeed in rare situations. On the average of hospitalization, we insist that the resident take medication as a condition for remaining at the house. Finally, when all else failed, we hospitalized the resident. This adjustment reduced the need for hospitalization over the years, and we can see it here that in the first months in 2016.
Remember, please, that 2016 we opened up in September. So 2016 isn't a year of experience; it's the first 4 months.
Yeah, and our first 4 months, it was very hard, and 6 out of 16 residents hospitalized.
We had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Oh my God, this is recorded.
And but in 2020, you can see that only 16 from 192, like only 8% we hospitalized. So we had a very big learning through the 4 years.
In 2020, some of the people decided for whatever reason that they want to go into the hospital, which is itself an interesting phenomenon. People who had to actually hospitalize against their will were only 3% because of uncontrolled violence and lack of cooperation. I think that 3% may be too little because we challenge ourselves. We want to see that we're taking on difficult situations and trying to find the solution.
Okay, a little bit about the culture conditions. So because in Israel, we have a lot of ultra-Orthodox population, so we have also gender segregated houses. It's mixed gender. And also we have a house for people who are speaking Arabs. We'll show it in 1 minute. And we know that culture adoption is particularly relevant among ethnic minority groups who do not identify with a conventional model of mental health and sometimes tend to disengage from it due to a lack of cultural sensitivity. So the model of Soteria, that is a little houses for for only like 8-10 people, it can manage with a cultural problem sometimes. And here you see like pictures from the houses. You can see the ultra-Orthodox in the Soteria in Jerusalem, and you can see in the right picture that Soteria Jerusalem visit the
Arab speaking home. Yes, the Arab speaking home.
House that in village of South Hamra. Okay, that's what Pesach now it's here.
Yeah, and Avrami Press, we hope to continue to make changes. First of all, we have three more houses in advanced planning stages, which I hope will come to fruition within the year 2021, including, and this is the most difficult challenge, a house for adolescents, because current regulations allow only from age 18 and above. We're working very hard to set up a home for the age 14 to 18 group, so that we can catch a lot of first episode situations. We're trying to develop more services, because though we already cooperate with the rehabilitation services, which are run by the state, but we're also trying to offer our own services for people who finish their stay with us and who continue to need the kind of community which we're able to offer. So we started offering different possibilities of support groups for the people who finish with us, for their families, and I hope that will develop further. We are working hard to that. We said 2 of the 4 health maintenance organizations, medical insurers, semi-public medical insurers, work with us. We're working hard to get the other 2 on, and of course, publishing research in the hope that to continue to help the word get out. So we have a lot of plans for expansion, and we really hope that this is going to be, it has already become something which people are aware of. I mean, we started this, nobody really knew in Israel what Soteria is, and today, especially under the name of these balancing houses or stabilizing homes, it's now become an accepted alternative. And I hope there'll be more and more homes. The idea is that there is a need for dozens, perhaps 100 of these homes in Israel, and we hope to continue this ambitious program of changing the system and changing the paradigm of what it means to help people in extreme situations. Okay, we need to leave time for questions, right? And yes, we're partnering with other groups.
Great, thank you so much. We had a lot of good questions in the chat. One was about how you make the program as equitable as possible with the whole issue of private pay versus funding. Basically, how to make the program equitable and accessible under the circumstances.
The first year, we survived mostly with philanthropy. Anyone who was daring, adventurous enough to give us a chance, we asked them to pay whatever they could, but mainly was financed by philanthropy. Today in Jerusalem, over 50% of the people coming in are completely funded by their health care insurers, the HMOs, Kupat Cholim in Hebrew. The others still pay out of pocket. So for someone whose health maintenance organization does not work with us, they have a problem. They might go to another one of these homes, which are not Soteria, but also very good alternatives, good people who've set up these places. But sometimes they do come and they have to pay. We are non-profit, tax-deductible organization, and whatever we take is just really to cover expenses, which we do not quite do. We are still, a few percent of our outlays are still dependent on philanthropy. And yes, it's inequitable that some people still cannot come in, but we're making huge progress with that, and we've never taken our sight off the target, which is that this be a service completely integrated in the mental health care system.
Great. Great. Next question is, what are your outcomes for people who have been cycling in and out of forced drugging and medication compliance environments, people suffering with chronic schizophrenia? Thank you for all your honesty.
Avremi, you want to work with the numbers?
What I was a little bit dreaming. What's the question?
What are your outcomes for people who have been cycling in and out of forced drugging and medication in environments where compliance is emphasized and people who've been diagnosed with chronic schizophrenia? Just kind of what your general outcomes are for people in that category.
Oh, if I understand, maybe the question is about the rehospitalization. If we reduce rehospitalization, like that. Okay, so I can open. Wait. I will open. Wait, how I'm getting out from that now. Wait. I will open a table. I will show you. It's an article that's supposed to be in psychiatric service. So I'm making it now a spoiler. Wait. Okay. 1 second. Here.
Avremi, summarize it, because sometimes sometimes the medical journals aren't pleased when we give these spoilers. So in order not to get into any trouble,
okay. So I won't show the table, but I can say that we want to publish a data that shows that people that have a lot of hospitalization in their life and came inside one of the houses in Israel, they reduce also the time in hospitals after, and also the number of hospitalizations after.
Right, great.
Then we test it like 1 year before and 1 year after, and we show the difference.
Great. And can you speak a little to the difference? Someone had asked the difference of people who are on medication versus not on medication.
That we don't have. We didn't do still yet.
We don't have long-term data. I would add that Avremi, as part of his doctoral work, is doing the first serious prospective study comparing Soteria with 2 other arms. One of them is online psychiatry. Is that what it's called? Online psychiatry, where you stay at your own home and someone talks to you on a screen. And the third arm is a standard psychiatric ward in a general hospital. And very interested in seeing what the outcomes will be for that.
Excellent. Excellent. I look forward to seeing that too. Next question. This person said, thank you for these amazing presentations. I'm interested in the idea of temporary rules. Would you be able to give an example? And if a temporary rule is formed in relation to the actions of one person, is it possible that person might feel victimized?
I think all rules are temporary because they can be changed by a group meeting after that. I mean, there are certain rules which aren't temporary, as in the real Soteria home, I think, had 3 rules: no drugs, no sex, and no visitors without advance warning and agreement of the house. With time, we accrue more rules, but a temporary rule might be that, well, let's say that in the women's home where it's most likely to happen, someone cuts herself. Not a suicide attempt, but self-mutilation. So, I mean, officially we don't allow that, but it happens, so we don't just throw her out. Of course, there's an attempt to talk with her. This requires a lot of support with the staff to understand what's happening, to see what the source of the distress is, how to help. Now, there are sometimes situations where we feel because of the dynamic which has developed and what it's causing for, and for other residents who suddenly feel an urge to copy that we have to tell her that we cannot allow this. And if it's done occasionally, we will ask the person to leave, not necessarily hospitalized. Sometimes we can't hospitalize her or don't want to, but we might tell her to leave the home for 2 days and to come back. These are rules which have to be done very carefully so the person doesn't feel victimized. Sometimes there will be a lot of there will be ill will about what are we doing, how can we abandon her, and these are things which we have to work with when we feel that it's a level of destructiveness which the house is not able to contain.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know that can be tricky. Yes. The
Yeah,
next
it's
question.
tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question. I'm not 100% sure what this person meant, and if they can clarify, that would be helpful. But it says, what is the legal status of people at Soteria?
We are not allowed to take people who do not agree to be with us. In other words, involuntary hospitalization, we cannot hold such people legally. We also are not interested in holding them. So people who come to us have to agree. They sign their consent to be with us. That said, I'm very proud of a day when based on prior intelligence which I had not gathered, I went to a local hospital and I went into 3 departments and came back to Soteria with 3 different people. One of them I took in my car, who in the 2 or 3 days prior to that had been hospitalized involuntarily, and in cooperation with the psychiatrists in charge of the departments. And I want to stress that I work with these people. As I said, we're not trying to alienate or aggravate anybody. We work together with them, and they agree that we take these 3 people who have been in involuntary hospitalization to Soteria, where they sign their agreement. Occasionally, we write a recommendation to the legal medical committee, which is supposed to decide on establishing or continuing an involuntary hospitalization, and we write, hey, we are an alternative, you can have them come to us. But when they come to us, their official legal situation is that it's voluntary, otherwise they couldn't be there. And that's part of, I mean, when people come to see us for the interview, so and we talk with them, it's a very open sort of interview. One of the points we make is you can't be if you don't want to, and we're not even going to try to pressure you or to convince you this is a place.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get to know each other. I have questions, you have questions, let's ask them. Sometimes I could sit there an hour and I'm the one being interviewed about the place. And at the end of this time, you'll have enough information, and whatever you decide is fine, which parenthetically is the most persuasive thing that I could possibly say, because it often sways people.
Great. And I know you touched on this some in the talk, but somebody asked how you treat catatonia and hallucinations.
Okay.
Maybe
you
I
want to
can
say
tell
something, Avremi?
about catatonia. I like catatonia. Yeah. Catatonia, in how we handle it like every else situation. We look on catatonia like a human situation. So if a person is catatonic, so we are with him, and we saw sometimes things on the house that people with catatonia, they are still with us. They're not 100% in their inside world. And so I can tell a couple of stories. Like one story that a person was catatonic, and he was on the couch and like in his own world, and I bring my face to his face in zero. It was like face to face. My nose touched his nose, And when he saw my face in that distance, he said, "Oh, Avremi, hi! I didn't knew that you are here." So and so that's how I started to be in touch with him, and all the time, like we are trying, like in a other person that was catatonic. I realized that if I am starting to sing, how trance music, I did like sing like that. He started to smile. He started to be with me. And like after a couple of times that I was singing with him, he started also to sing with me, to talk a little bit. But it was very, both of them, it was very hard, because after I came, like the first one, after I came a little bit back, he came back to the catatonic. Was a person, when I stopped singing, he also came back to his catatonic situation. But we all the time tried. We never lose hope, and we never say, okay, he's catatonic, only we'll give him medication, and we'll put him in his own world to be alone there.
I remember it's different stories, different situations. Music is an important part of it. I remember once somebody who a couple of days was with us would kind of just sit and stare blankly on the couch, and he wouldn't respond to anything I did. So suddenly I saw a guitar. I took the guitar. I know how to play on a very primitive level, and I started improvising a song to my chords. And as I strummed the chords, I would ask us, "So I wonder what you're thinking and what can be going on. Will you ever tell me something like that?" And I started just making up this little tune. And then when I stopped, for the first time, I heard his voice, and he said, "Are you a psychiatrist?"
Sounds like that was a compliment. Someone else asked if you see any patterns in what causes a catatonic state.
These are big questions. These are big questions, which I wish I had a worthy answer. I do think that it seems to be a terrible, terrible existential anxiety, a fear that has just nothing to do like fright, flight, or fright, or freeze, a freeze situation where they just can't do anything else because of this overwhelming fear, and that seems to be what's often going on here. And the stories which Avrami and I are telling are the lovely stories. I freely admit that you're not always going to find the situation for that kind of terrible, paralyzing anxiety by music, and it's difficult. I hesitate before taking somebody who's truly catatonic. I would probably take Avremi circa 2005 into the house, but we've occasionally had people on IV in the living room, and it's not easy.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
One person that had catatonic, he told me that what he feels in a catatonic situation, like a computer that get off, that he feels that he don't have not thoughts, not like he's turned off. And like when I bring my face to his face, it's like I turn on the computer. Why the computer get off? He don't know what to say why the computer get off, but that's how we feel in those situations. That situation.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, somebody asked, how much does your 30 plus day stay cost in US dollars, and what's the difference between private pay versus insurance?
What we take the same rate, whether it's the insurance paying for it or a person paying out of pocket. It's about like 270 American dollars a day, which is not that much, but that's what hospitalization costs more than that. But that's what we take to cover costs. So for a month, it comes out, if you figure out, to about $8,000 American dollars a month.
Mhm. Great.
Can
Great.
I ask a question?
Sure.
I wonder what the voice thinks about this particular permutation of psychiatry, of Soteria.
Yes.
This is the problem for me. Everything you said, I had something to say, so it's sort of, it's kind of difficult in this kind of context to respond. There's so many things. For instance, I think your presentation is great, and I realize I'm just amazed at how much of the original Soteria and what you're doing and the language you're using is so consistent. The context is in some ways very different. Even the notion of, so for instance, some things like you said, who is the staff? Judge on the character of the person, not the profession. For me, what's wrong with that comment is that profession is a very powerful issue. It's whether it's good or bad is the issue. Because in some ways, your history as a professional can be very helpful. One of our Soteria staff was a psychiatrist, the line staff, and he was a very good asset for it. He was one of the most popular residents there. But he wasn't acting in the traditional sense we think of psychiatry, but he had all the knowledge. One of the things that is clearly important to Soteria is that doesn't make sense to be anti anything. To be anti something means that something has some kind of control over you. All knowledge is pertinent. What you do with the knowledge and how much that knowledge gives you power in that context is the issue.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Yes, thank you so much. We've got 5 minutes.
And I wanted to offer that we could set up, we've been Rethinking Psychiatry has had a little mini series called Conversations with Voice, and we could set up a conversation with Avrami and Pesach and Voice and get to have a more in-depth conversation. That would be fabulous if you all would be interested.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
I would like that. That would be good for me. It'd have to be a situation where I could talk a lot, because otherwise there's so much you talk about. It's just like, if I start talking, you would have no presentation.
Voice, you are not threatening me. You are convincing me how important and how interesting this could be.
Great. Thank you. Looks like we've got 5 minutes. We've got 2 questions. One was from Grace, which was if there was research on the difference between the effectiveness between Soteria houses and other stabilizing houses that use more medication. I don't know.
No, there has not been, nor do I intend to do that, because at this point, the other stabilizing homes are, they're all partners in making change. This is not something I really want to know at this point. I'd be happy to compare us to hospitals. I'm not going to try to show in any way that we might be better. I don't know what the situation would be. It's very tricky. More medication can very well create short-term benefits. I don't know if I'm up to the point of doing a 10 or 20-year follow-up, in which case I'd have to leave it to Avremi to get the final results. I couldn't say, but I hear from most people coming from most of the houses who I meet that they're always have wonderful things to say, and I'm in touch with them, and maybe when there'll be 100 houses, we'll talk about competition. At this point, it's a sense of partnership amongst all the houses, Soteria or not.
Right.
Great. And I want to make
go ahead.
I just want to make a little housekeeping comment here. I know not everybody pays attention to the chat. if you are enjoying this program and you are not on the Rethinking Psychiatry list and you want notices of future programs, including our Peer Respite Soteria Summit, please put your email address in the chat with your name as you like to be known. You can change the little where it says to everyone. You could change that so it's just to the hosts, so you don't share your email with everybody unless you want to. And we will add you to our list. So please, we're always so frustrated when people come and then we don't know how to reach them again. So this is a way to do that. Please put your email address and your name in the chat to us and we'll add you. Thank you. Rachel.
Thank you very much. And it looks like there might be a few questions that we might not get to, but one that I think is a good way to close is, what's kind of the biggest lesson you've learned from beginning to where you are now of Soteria? Or some lesson, not necessarily the biggest, but any important lessons?
Conventional wisdom is best challenged. There are other ways of doing things, and so often, conventional wisdom often coalesces around the most convenient way of doing things, but that's not always the best way. I mean, working with us is harder than in a hospital, but that's what's necessary. So it's really the importance of thinking out of the box and then applying what you do, and not being afraid of challenging the conventional wisdom.
Avrami, do you want to say what any of your biggest?
I don't know. My biggest learn, it's not so optimistic, because I came with some big dreams that I will save the world. And when we'll open Soteria, there will be no psychotic in the world, and everybody. For me, it was very hard. I wasn't in 25 years psychiatrist, and I believe that love can be a treatment for everybody, and the love can solve all the problems in the world. And for me, it's a big lesson that it's not always help, and people that I gave them all my heart, they're still suffering, and it's very hard for me.
Which is another lesson, that there is not one way to help people, and there's not, and they have to be really flexible and open to other things. The first year, I thought that with the love and support we'd provide, who would need medication? I was wrong.
Thank you too for sharing with so much honesty and really beautiful presentation. I'm hoping that maybe you'd be willing to share your slides. If that would feel all right, we can post them with the video if you want. If not, that's okay too. But I know there was a lot of data that we didn't get to look at in depth. And I just, on that note, I feel very moved, and want to thank you both for your time, your encouragement on this international program that we're trying to do, for your incredible tenacity in making change, however incremental. It sounds like it's adding up to some big systemic changes, and we'll follow up. And I want to thank Voice, as always, for being Voice, and for being the repository of so much knowledge and wisdom, and always incredible generosity of sharing both you know what you know and also your giant heart. I want to thank all the people who've shown up and been part of this conversation. I want to thank Maron for sharing your story so vulnerably. It's very profound. I saw in the chat many people were very moved by it also. And please stay with us if you want to get involved in planning the Peer Respite Soteria Summit. Also let us know in the chat. And if there are more questions, we'll work them into the conversation that we have with Avrami and Pesach and Voice, and maybe bring in other Soteria folk too, or maybe that'll be part of the summit. So we'll figure it all out. It all remains to be seen. Thank you, Rachel, for your amazing moderation of the chat, as always. Phileas, for your newsletters, and Cindy for carrying the torch this whole time. Everybody, thank you so much. Take good care.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. This was great.
Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.